Hey, this is your sister and ally, Moi Fung, coming to you with another episode of Moi Talks, Life Beyond the Surface. Conversations intended to empower you to walk in wholeness and true freedom based on the Word of God. Listen in. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining another episode of Moi Talks. This is your sister and ally, Moi Fung. We have another amazing show today. Today, Arlene will be joining us again. We spoke with Arlene last week, and she shared with us about her early childhood experiences and how it impacted her parenting. Arlene is a community advocate. She's an educator, and she's a parent, but she's also someone who wants to raise awareness around intentional parenting, especially for the Black community. Now, Arlene, I'm so honored to have you join me again today. Today, you'll be sharing a little bit more about some of the health issues that you're still facing.
Yes.
And just how intentional parenting all plays out in all of that.
Okay.
Right? So thank you so much for joining me again. It was the last episode was quite deep. I think you shared a lot just in terms of the intergenerational traumas and how they're passed down and how it impacted you and your child. And now you're faced with health issues. Do you want to let's get right into it. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about, when the issues started? What were the symptoms? And did you ignore them? And what does that look like? And why is it important for you to educate parents at this time? I know it's so much that I'm asking, but I guess I'm so excited just to
But
hear.
as we go through,
But
definitely.
Yes, absolutely. Share with us about when what the health issues are and when they first started.
Well, clearly, the key word here that I've truly learned is awareness. And I will keep repeating myself on that because that is how we learn as human beings, through repetition. I cannot stress enough the importance of self-awareness, self-actualization, being able to be true to yourself. Because clearly, if you're not true to yourself, you're not only deceiving yourself, but you are deceiving others. And that situation brings on a great amount of stress. And, stress is something that God had not designed for us because it literally just shifts your autoimmune system into what it was not. We were created fearfully, wonderfully, and perfectly made, right? And so when you do not acknowledge yourself, your whole being, you are going to come off course. So what that looked like for me was initially when I started working and I got deeper and deeper into my profession, I became so passionate about helping the kids, and their families. I was so passionate about that. And I still am. That's why, you know what? I'm really glad that I actually am still in community, though I'm not in the system anymore right now. When I was at work and I really became more aware of how the system works, there's a lot of changes that need to be done in that system. Because as it stands, it's like from the pipeline to prison right now, especially for kids that look like us. So the reason I say self-awareness as a parent is so imperative is because if you are not aware of self, you are not aware of what's going on around you, and you're not aware of what's happening with your children. When you are a parent, you really have to take the time to invest in yourself so you transfer that into your children. Because we are given these children as gifts. They come through us. So when I was at work, I was highly stressed after a few years because I got really deep into my job and what I saw. I tried desperately to advocate for these kids in the system. And because I really couldn't get anywhere, I took it on. The stress level was really high at that point. I would not sleep at night. I barely got any sleep, had to wake up early in the morning, barely ate anything. There were multiple days where I would bring my lunch to work and bring it straight back home. My mother was so concerned. She's like, what is happening with you? So stress is really a silent killer, is what I really want to impress upon the audience. It is truly, literally a silent killer. And if you don't address it and you take it for granted, the longer you take it for granted, the more it's going to progress.
Okay, so that's fair. And thank you so much for sharing that, because you know firsthand what stress looks like in your own life.
Yes.
And how it's impacted your health. Now, if you can just share a little bit more in terms of your personal experience and what you were faced with.
So clearly, in addition to what I was saying, the stress level, the not eating properly, the not sleeping properly, symptoms started to develop within me. The first symptoms were my knuckles, my joints. They would just hurt. And hurt and nonstop hurt for days. Then I didn't even address it with the doctors. I just thought it would go away with my family doctor. Didn't go away. Other symptoms started to progress. Like I became very, very excessively cold, sensitive to the cold. Even when we would come in for recess, first morning recess, we're waiting for school to start. And if it was wintertime, oh my Lord. After we came in, I would be the only one having my coat on for like almost an hour before I could take it off. While everyone would be like, why do you still have your coat on? So that was another thing. I became very sensitive to cold, my joints, my breathing. I remember one time when the symptoms progressed even further. I was going up the stairs one time and I couldn't make it up the second flight of stairs. I had to ask a student to hold my hand and help me up the stairs.
So at that time, were you thinking that it was anything serious, anything that you needed to look into? At what point did you start to?
At that point, when I did, because the student did help me up the stairs with concern, was like, Miss, are you okay? At that point, after work, I did book a doctor's appointment. I had to wait for the doctor's appointment, clearly. Then when I went...
Why did you have to wait? Sorry, I'm not...
Because he was booked.
Okay.
He was booked. And I didn't make it seem as though it was that imperative. So that's why. And funny enough, he was my doctor for like my childhood, my family doctor. And so over a period of time, that happened. I went to the doctor. He did all this testing, like ultrasound, blood work. The blood work came back. And this is the mistake that we make. We think that things are just going to go away. Even at times, we can be so stubborn, thinking it's going to go away because you're hearing the words of the doctor, but you're not really stepping up or addressing them. Because when the blood work came back, the ultrasounds for me were fine, but the blood work, and I had to do a biopsy as well for my kidneys. And, but prior to that, the blood work had come back. And at that point, they saw inflammation in my blood. And they claimed that it was lupus at that time. But I never really believed it was lupus because I've never had it. I've never had it, and I've never had any symptoms of it. And this is the thing, because I was such an advocate at that time, but not even really advocating for myself in the positive way, I kept on saying, I don't have it, I don't have it, I don't have it. I never had, I know people that have, and I don't have it.
So why did you do that?
That's a good question.
Was that an act of faith, or was it just
Literally,
more so?
to a certain degree, it was an act of faith because actually it was that moment when things started to become more disruptive in my system because I really didn't have it, thank God. It was just because of what was taking place in my body. It was just inflammation at that point. But other things were starting to arise. And so there was issues with my heart. Like I began to retain water. And that's where the lack of breathing would come in. And as you know, Moy, because you were there, I swole up like a balloon. And I literally felt like Job 3 years ago at one point in my life. And the reason I was so reluctant to go into the medical system, that's the thing. Sometimes you think that you're so much more educated. And then there's a lack of trust that develops within that particular system. And the more you study about the system and what you know historically, you turn around and you don't really end up trusting it. But in the same note, you could put yourself in danger, which is what I did.
Okay, so let's just stop for a second. So what did you know? Just for those of us, who don't know, what did you know about the system historically, the medical system?
Well, historically, I knew that, to be honest, there was a lot of misguided information. A lot of people, there was a lot of malpractice, mistreated, misdiagnosed.
Yes.
And I know the reason why I didn't trust the system, when I say mistreated, is going back to when I first became a mom. I had a really bad episode. Because I was a Black single mom, they totally disregarded me to a certain extent. Even when I told them I was feeling pain, they were like, oh, it's just Braxton Hicks. It's not real. Go to sleep. And I couldn't go to sleep because I was in pain. I had to keep calling them. So from then, I felt, they put me in danger before.
Yes, okay.
And so on. And I've had quite a few episodes like that, even in emergency. When I was rushed to emergency, I had a bad experience because the nurse at that time wasn't really attentive and neither was the doctor, right? So I had a few bad experiences. So that's what prevented me. And even when I first was diagnosed with this and they sent me to a doctor that has to do with and nephrologist, she had put me on such a high dose of prednisone at first because they thought that I had lupus, but now they never could really find, right? So now what they say, it's in remission, but I keep telling them I never had it. So anyways, when she first diagnosed me and she gave me such a high doses of prednisone, God is so good because on that high dosage, and how I knew it was excessively high was when I had to go get another prescription. And I had a friend that worked at Shoppers, and he's like, Arlene, that is excessively high. Why are you shouldn't be on it for that long. And then, so said, so done. Shortly after that, when I started taking the second dose, you remember how long and thick my hair was before this. I saw my hair falling out in clumps in the sink. And literally I would see bald spots.
So, okay, so let's actually go. So we hear your symptoms and they were quite dire, right? So you're saying that what you're experiencing, whether it be lupus or not, you're saying that this was a direct result of the stress that you were experiencing.
Oh, clearly.
Right? Within your job and just what you took on and all of that. And now ultimately what you want to do is you want to educate other parents, other mothers.
Absolutely.
To really take heed and take hold of your health,
That's right.
So you're still experiencing some of those symptoms now, is what you're saying?
Yes, because matter of fact, the lupus issue wasn't the main issue. I had to take, like I said, a biopsy of my kidneys. And then at that point, they said, oh, there's a bit of inflammation. And, you know, to be honest, again, I didn't really trust the system. So I took myself off of those prednisones, to be honest, because when my hair had fallen out in those, and I literally, a friend of mine had to cut it into like a boy cut per se, I was so depressed. And that was another thing the medication was doing. It was causing depression, the side effects, and it was causing confusion. So this is why this is another why I didn't really trust them, because I thought, how could they see all of these things? I'm expressing all of these things, and they're not even addressing it. They're keeping me on this. So I distanced myself from the doctors for a long time, and then I tried going to naturopathic, but at that point, the symptoms had increased way too far in advance, where I needed the medical attention and not the naturopathic at that point. So
it was more about intervention.
It was more about intervention for me. And that's the hard lesson that I had learned, because if I just moved forward and really advocated for myself more, knowing my body, things probably wouldn't have gotten to the degree that they got with my kidneys, because now I'm on dialysis, right?
But I definitely understand your reluctancy, you know, in trusting the healthcare system. Because unfortunately, there are stats that actually prove your experience, right? As Black women, there are inequities within healthcare. And there's a whole list of them, and we can maybe talk about that on another show.
Exactly.
But Arlene, you know, it's just your story, your journey, you know, even dealing with the health issues and how, you know, the distrust with the health care system. These are real issues that women face. That Black women face. And, you know, I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because we want people to know ultimately what you're saying is you want to raise awareness to say, okay, there are, you know, there has to be, you know, means, you know, what do you do? So maybe share a little bit about that. So there's that distrust. And it's quite warranted, right? But what does a woman do, a Black woman do, when you start to experience symptoms? What do you do? What is your recommendation? When we talk about intentionality, what do you do?
Absolutely. Well, like I said, clearly what you do, first and foremost, you have to trust in the Almighty God. You know that saying, let go and let God? Because at the end of the day, He wants what is good for you. I'm not saying that to run to them every minute, I'm saying before the symptoms occur deeper, just please, like, just take care of yourself. Start eating properly, start resting properly, meditate, pray, right? And in the interim, you go and you do what you are supposed to do. You go and you get checked medically. Know thyself first, though. But like I said before, you've got to be true to thyself in order to know yourself. Once you know yourself, then you can effectively advocate for what you want and what you need, because this is what I have done. And once you do that, I'm telling you, where there's no way, God will make a way. Because where I'm at now, the team that I have at the hospital, Etobicoke, they're phenomenal. Like, their goal, even though there's things that they don't really, they believe in the system, put it that way, 100%. So their goal is really to make me well. Like the nephrologist that I have, Dr. Donnelly, she's phenomenal. You know, her goal is to make you, are you okay? Every minute. She's checking your stats every minute to prepare herself ahead of time. So once you give everything over to God, I'm telling you, he will make a way and he will put your destiny helpers in place, ready for you.
So are you saying then that if a woman is feeling, let's say, reluctancy just to go get checked out, you're saying that, to put that aside and to really just trust God?
Yes.
Right? Because not every person in the healthcare system is there to
Exactly.
because you're suggesting, or you're saying that your nurses and your the team, the medical staff that's dealing with you, they've been phenomenal, which is really great to hear. Um, so how does that? So right now you are off work. We know that you're an educator. That's what you have been doing for nearly 13 years, is what you said. So you're off work now, and you're taking this time, I suppose, to heal, right?
Clearly, yes.
But I mean, you're on the show today, so you also want to raise awareness because you see that this is an urgent matter. It's an urgent issue of raising awareness. How did this impact your son? You spoke about your son in the last show. How did your illness impact your son?
Well, first and foremost, it did take a toll on him eventually. Prior to the last episode I had, my son was very, very supportive. He was literally like my right hand. When it was time to do my treatments at home, he would get the treatments ready, like ritually, no questions asked. He would know it was that time and would get it. He would help me. When I was on the machine at night, he would help me set up the machine. When the machine had technical issues, he would be the one to help me when I would call the support. Like, he was very, very supportive. When I would do my banking, believe it or not, he would help me do my banking. He knew all my passwords without even having to go and look at them or for them.
Okay.
Any technical issues I had when I had my meetings on Zoom, he would be the one quick as like lightning to set it up. He knew when it was, and he's like, okay, Mom, you're good to go. Oh, yes. I'm even writing a book, and further details, it indicates throughout the period of time how our relationship actually developed. He ended up putting trust in me as I ended up putting trust in him. But the last episode, there was a couple, and it kind of shifted him where he became very scared, per se, like concerned, because, and the thing is, he wasn't speaking about it. He wasn't speaking to anyone about it. He kept it all in, which is not good, because he wanted to be that strong source, because he was literally like the man of the house. Because my mother had had a car accident too. She got hit. She was a pedestrian and she got hit by a car 2019. And that also affected him because he was the man, like literally taking care of both of us at one point.
Yeah, that would take a toll.
It took a toll. The last episode I had, it was very scary. I literally felt like death, and I looked like death. There was two back to back, literally. The first one that scared him, but not so much, was in August, where I ended up, because I passed out on the machine when I was getting treatment, just completely passed out. So they wrapped me up. They sent me to Mississauga Civic Hospital. So he expected me to come home that day, but I ended up in hospital. But the thing is that made it different from last time to this time was I called him and I spoke to him. So he heard my voice and knew that I was in good hands, right? And he even came to visit me one time, right? So he saw that I was okay. But then shortly after that, most recently, actually, early October, I had another episode. And, God is so good, so patient, so kind, so merciful. I can't impress upon that. Even if you have pain in your pinky finger and it's for more than a day, please go and check it out. Because I remember a week prior to the last episode I had, I went shopping with my friend. You know me.
Yes, I know you.
And my leg, my left ankle, all of a sudden was just hurting. And it was like when I got out of the car, my legs were stiff. And when I got out to walk, they were somewhat wobbly. I said, wow, this is weird. I've never felt this before. What is going on? Believe it or not, my friend told me, Arlene, because the next day she would check up on me every day, okay, if she doesn't come over. The next day, she asked me how I was. I told her my leg still. She goes, Arlene, please go to the doctor. Do you know that I still resisted because I thought this is going to go away? And so about a week went by, and she kept on telling me to go to the doctor. But the Wednesday, I remember it was a Wednesday evening, my body began to feel so heavy. I tried going to sleep even early because I was so uncomfortable. I said, let me try to go to sleep. I couldn't even sleep. I tossed and turned. My body felt even heavier. So eventually I fell asleep for a few hours. Thursday morning, I woke up trying to get out of bed. Would you believe I couldn't even move? I couldn't walk. I couldn't pull myself up off the bed. I thought, oh my God, what is this? I'm holding on to my bed rail. I couldn't even move. Still couldn't get up. So I'm holding on to the pole where I do dialysis as well as because I thought, what is this? Oh my God, I can't walk. What happened? I can't walk. Then I managed to literally pull myself up off the bed, but I couldn't stand. I couldn't walk. I fell flat on the floor. And I sat there for a while because I was just so in awe. I was like, my God, what has happened to me? Am I paralyzed? What just happened here? And I sat there and I literally prayed. I was like, God, forgive me for not paying attention. How much longer will you have patience with me?
So that's a thing that I want to sort of interject, because I know that as people of faith, oftentimes we might have, let's say, a symptom as you had, and our faith, and it really depends. Are we having blind faith, or
Exactly.
like, what are we believing in? Because there are some of us who will say, well, no, it's nothing, and
Yes,
it's going to go away, or we rebuke the pain, we rebuke the symptoms, or what have you. But what I'm hearing from you is that there's a level of wisdom that we ought to exercise
Exactly.
as well, right?
Exactly.
And then how do you reconcile that? Like, how do you actually, what do you say to that person who's, let's say, super, full of faith?
No. What we have to remember is, yes, we're full of faith, but we're living on this three-dimensional earth, which is a fallen world. So your body, especially people that look like you and me, this is not our natural habitat. We come from a cultural tropical habitat. And with that being said, we have to recognize where we are and take heed of that. And if understanding who you are, and once, like I said, you feel that, you're right. If you don't address that, that is actually blind faith. It is not exercising wisdom at all. And you put yourself in more danger like I did. And this is what I'm trying to express and impress upon. Please, if there's any sort of discomfort for over a day in your body, you need to go and check it out. Exercise the wisdom of God, because God has been very patient with me, very merciful. Because let me tell you, when I ended up in the hospital this last time recently, I was literally at death's door again. The one before that, prior in August, which really wasn't my fault because I did what I did and it happened in treatment, I literally was at death's door. I passed out for 15 minutes. I was speaking to a friend of mine on the phone and she didn't hear me, but she didn't want to disconnect the line because the team at Civic, Mississauga Civic, was around me and they were calling my name. And she said to me, Arlene, I thought I lost a friend that day because you don't understand. The team sounded like they were in a panic. She froze in the middle of the street. And then she heard them say, try her one more time. And on that one time is when I came back. And so my son was aware of that. And so he has been so traumatized by the past 2 episodes because the last one, he was the one that had to help me off the floor and get ready to go to the hospital because I couldn't move. Only my upper limbs were able to move. And so when I went to the hospital and this Dr. Donnelly lady, she said, do you realize you were at death's door? Your potassium level was at a level of 8.5. That is double what it should be, is what she said. And she said to me, when I talk about destiny helpers, the first thing she had said to me was, I'm grateful you're here. I'm just grateful you're here.
And how long ago was that?
Early October. I want to say about the second week of October.
So just over a month or so.
Shortly, yes.
Is when you had this last experience.
Yes, yes.
Wow, that's quite a journey, Arlene.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you shared on the last show just your childhood and growing up and your parenting and, just the what you took on from your job. And now you're, just bringing us into how that job affected you and impacted you.
The stress level, yes.
And for the most part, what you're saying is that, you lived your life in a way of, which many of us do, in a way of unconsciousness, just to what's happening inside of you, what's going on around you, how the world has impacted you and how you're responding to the world and how it's affecting everybody else that you love and you deal with. And that's quite something. And I do thank you for sharing that. But you're urging parents, you're urging mothers and fathers as well.
Yes, absolutely.
People in general, really.
People in general.
To take heed of your health.
Yes.
To listen to your bodies.
Yes.
And not to be, even as people of faith, not to have this blind faith, but to also to exercise wisdom.
Exercise wisdom. Wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. Because, like I said, the culture that we live in, the foods that we're eating, and you know me, I'm very bad for that. But
that was another question that I was going to ask because you said this is the last episode you had, you were at death's door. And God has been merciful to you. Now, what are you doing to really take charge of your health? What changes have you made since that very last episode to really take charge of your health?
Well, to be honest, I didn't have an appetite before for about 2 years because of the type of treatment that I was on. So now that the doctor has switched me, it's like I feel better, much better, more active. But you're right. With that, it is a process. I'm not saying that it's easy because, as you know, you're always on me to eat better. And the thing with me is, because I haven't eaten so long, it's like gobble, gobble, gobble. It's like food is pleasure now. But like you said, again, you have to be more conscious of what goes in your body because what goes in is what is going to come out and that's how your body's going to react.
Absolutely.
Right? So now I eat, but I do need to eat better.
Okay. All right. So we're holding you accountable for all
That's
of you
right.
who are watching. We are going to hold Arlene accountable for the food that she eats because it's so important what you put into your body. And exercise. And you mentioned all of this stuff earlier, and that's something that I'm even reminded of as I'm sitting here with you, because sometimes we tend to be, at times, workaholics.
Yes.
And, we're not getting the sufficient rest and all of that stuff. But it's really good to have that reminder from you. And then just to realize also, just by listening to your story, how the fragility of life.
Yes.
Because we know, Arlene, we know that you've grown spiritually. And there's a poise and a strength that you carry now that is absolutely just amazing. Because I know Arlene before.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And, right. And it's really good to see how God can develop us through the struggles that we face.
Yes.
And I'm hoping for your whole healing, and that you will come back to, better than before.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
With the inner development as well as the outer restoration.
Yes, 100.
I'm really looking forward to that. But we are going to wrap up, and I know that this has impacted your son gravely.
Yes.
And he's also have faced or have faced more recently due to the recent episodes that you had, or as a result of all of what's been happening. Some situations, and I think we may very well have you back again. You will be coming back to share with your son.
Yes.
Maybe take him along with you if he's open to that, to talk about some of the stuff that he's been faced with. Yes. You know that I'm here for you once again. My heart goes out to you and your family, and we're going to continue to pray for you and believe for total restoration.
Amen.
But thank you so much for just your strength that you have, and just what you're sharing, and just using your experiences really that's propelling you to purpose, propelling you to be that voice in the desert, to say, listen, we got to wake up. We got to wake up. We got to be intentional. We got to,
That's right. Stop taking things for granted.
We got to stop taking things for granted. We got to, and it's just, thank you.
You're very
That's
welcome.
all I want to say is thank you. And, this is our third episode, I believe. And just thank you, Arlene. And I look forward to seeing you maybe next week with Noah.
Clearly. Thank you.
So he can share his journey
I will,
with us.
definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Moy.
You're welcome. So everyone, wow. That was our third episode of Moy Talk Season 2. It started off with a bang. Arlene Wallace, an educator, community activist, and a mother who wants to raise awareness, just sharing her journey and her pains, really, and just letting people know the importance of what it means to be intentional about parenting, what it means to be intentional about self-care, what it means to be a person of faith, but also a person of wisdom.
Yes.
I'm just so grateful to have this conversation with Arlene, and she's promised to come and join us next week with her son, Noah, who unfortunately has been faced and experiencing issues as a result of all of what she's experienced. And we're sharing these stories not to dampen your mood. There's so much going on, but it's really just to share with you that there are real people out here dealing with real life situations. But we know that also that God is very able. We see the strength that she possesses, and we're just so grateful for God for how he's using her in this time and in this season. So thank you, all of you who've tuned in to watch Moy Talks. We will see you next week, and God bless you. This is your sister and ally, Moy Fang. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, remember, life is way too short to be average, so don't shrink back. Don't shrink back, Masay, and compete with no one other than yourself. Be excellent at whatever you do. Enough love from your sister and ally, Moy Fang.